So you'd be forgiven for thinking that the new AirPods Pro 3 are a small upgrade. At first glance, they look nearly identical to the second generation AirPods Pro. However, these aren't just another quiet update. Apple have changed more with these headphones than they're letting on. I wasn't expecting much from these earbuds to begin with. However, after using them for the past couple of weeks, I've been really impressed with the updates that Apple have made. The unboxing for these earbuds is pretty simple. Unfortunately, the charging cable isn't included in the box this year. You just get the AirPods, some manual instructions, and your spare ear tips. And the first thing you'll notice is that the ear tips this year are slightly different to before. The silicone material is now foam infused, which allows for a much stronger seal. And the design on the earbuds has also changed slightly to support this, with the speaker nozzle being ever so slightly longer than before. So for those of you trying to mix and match your ear tips between generations, unfortunately that won't work. Previously with the AirPods Pro, I'd often have issues when running with them or moving my head aggressively because the sweat from my ears would eventually cause them to slip out. However, those issues have somewhat mitigated with this generation. The fit isn't always perfect. I have had issues where if I'm doing a neck curl in the gym, the constant back and forth motion from my head still causes the earbuds to slip out a bit. However, it is much better than what it was before. A lot of people online have also complained about the AirPods Pro 3 being less comfortable than the 2s for some users, and I sort of get where these people are coming from. The new ear tips are much firmer and have a less bendy flex to them, so although the seal is better, it can feel a bit tight at times. Another thing to note is that because of the way Apple have designed these new earbuds, you also need to tilt the earbuds forward to get in a proper fit. Overall, I still prefer the feel of the second generation AirPods Pro in my ears. However, the new third gens are by no means bad. They just might take you a couple of days to get used to. The only change I had to make this time round was using a smaller tip. By default, the AirPods Pro 3 come with the medium sized tip. However, I've had to go small this year. Incidentally, a lot of people online have complained about the ear tips apparently being too tight and difficult to remove. Some people have even reported their tips ripping apart when removing them because of how tight the attachment is. For me personally, I've not had any issues with the attachment being too tight, so this may just be an issue with some models out there. Now, one thing to note about these earbuds is that they are technically still using the same H2 chip as the second generation Pros. So all of the improvements to sound quality and noise cancellation that I'm going to talk about in this video are technically all the result of the improved seal rather than any improvements to the underlying technology in these headphones. So your results will very much vary depending on the quality of the seal that you're able to get. From my personal experience, the audio quality was the first thing I noticed an improvement in. I could immediately tell that the bass was a lot stronger and the sounds felt much richer without being muddied or overwhelming, which works great for the genres of music that I listen to, which mostly tends to consist of hip hop and R&B. The highlights also feel a lot clearer and louder on the AirPods Pro 3, which overall contributes to a more clear and accurate sound profile, especially when listening to general popular music. When it comes to noise cancellation, I've also seen some nice improvements here. When I'm outdoors in places like coffee shops, I've noticed that higher frequency sounds like the human voice feel a bit quieter and more muted, which allows me to focus better. Now, I already thought that the ANC in the second generation Pros was good enough. So what this upgrade has allowed me to do is to use my AirPods at lower volumes whilst being able to achieve the same level of noise cancellation, which is generally healthier for your ears in the long run. I also did a test where I played the opening scene of Thunderball at full volume on my iPad whilst listening to some music on my AirPods through my Mac. With the second generation AirPods Pro, I could feel myself getting distracted by the sounds of Sean Connery coming from my iPad, whereas with the third gen, the sounds were a bit more muted and felt lower pitched. And when you're not listening to any music, I've noticed that there's less of that annoying, sharp hissing sound that comes from the AirPods Pro 3 compared to the previous version, allowing for a more peaceful experience. Now, Apple are claiming on their website that the Pro 3s have twice the amount of noise cancellation compared to the 2s, and up to 4 times than the first generation AirPods Pro. I'm not sure whether I believe the 2x claim. Anecdotally, I'd say that I've seen maybe a 20 to 30% improvement in the active noise cancellation on these headphones. It's primarily a difference that you notice when A B testing the two headphones side by side. However, I think if you were to secretly swap the earbuds between the two cases, I probably wouldn't notice that you've done that just based on the noise cancellation alone. From the audio quality, I might be able to notice the difference, but from the noise cancellation, probably not. Speaking of the case, you'll notice that the case is ever so slightly larger than before with these new AirPods. Apple have also removed the pairing button on the back, so you now have to double tap on the front to activate pairing mode. And as a fun fact, you'll see that the icon for the case inside of Apple's battery widget is slightly different now. Now, you'd think that with the case being larger, that Apple would have more space to fit in a larger battery. However, they've actually done the opposite. So the earbuds themselves are rated for having 8 hours of listening time with ANC enabled, which is an improvement compared to 6 hours before. And this should make the AirPods Pro more suitable for things like longer haul flights or long working days. However, the case itself actually has a smaller battery, offering a total of 24 hours of listening time versus 30 hours previously, which I think is a shame. However, to be fair, Apple do a good job at notifying you when your battery is running low, and a quick 5-minute charge will give you an extra hour of listening time. Generally, I found myself having to charge my case every 2 to 3 days. That translates into roughly 12 to 18 hours of listening time. Speaking of charging, Apple have now switched all of the cases to USB-C compared to Lightning previously, which should make charging more convenient if you're using a recent iPhone model. However, if you're using a slightly older iPhone model that still uses Lightning, you are going to have to deal with multiple cables. Or alternatively, you can continue to charge the case via wireless charging using MagSafe or an Apple Watch charger like before. Another upgrade Apple have made to the case is adding the new U2 chip, which now enables for more precise Find My support. Specifically, the precision finding range has been increased by 50% versus the U1 chip in the AirPods Pro 2. Now, as always, Apple have packed in a bunch of new software features into the AirPods Pro this year. You, of course, have the same features like adaptive transparency, like before, and the auto noise adjustment feature. One improvement I have noticed is that the auto volume feels much more responsive now. So I noticed with my AirPods Pro 2, if I went to wash my hands, it would take the earbuds a few seconds to recognize the sound of the water and to uplift the volume, whereas the AirPods Pro 3 do that almost instantly, which I really like. However, unfortunately, a lot of the software bugs that the AirPods are known for are still around. So before recording this video actually, I had an issue where my left earbud just wasn't working. Like I would place the headphones in my ear and I could only hear audio coming out of the right earbud. I even took both earbuds out and placed them back into the case and then back into my ears, and still the left one wasn't responding despite it being fully charged. So unfortunately, this is still an issue that happens to me quite regularly. The headline new feature this year though is the new heart rate tracking during workouts, powered by the new sensor that Apple have built into the earbuds. So if you're somebody who doesn't like using wearable devices to track their heart rate during workouts, you now have an alternative option. However, if you also wear an Apple Watch whilst working out, your iPhone will take readings from both devices and try and figure out which one is offering the most accurate heart rate measurement. It is worth noting that the heart rate tracking only works during workouts. So if you just want to capture your resting heart rate, you'll still need an Apple Watch or another fitness tracker to do that. And there is a very small hit to the battery life, with Apple claiming you get 6 hours of listening time with ANC with heart rate tracking versus 8 hours without it. Another feature Apple talked a lot about with these AirPods was live translation. Essentially, if you're listening to somebody speak in a different language, the AirPods will translate that audio for you in real time. You can activate this feature through the Translate app by clicking on the live translation toggle at the bottom, or alternatively by pressing and holding on both earbuds simultaneously. From my short testing, it felt like there were a few delays between when sentences were being spoken and when the phone actually translated it. So I can imagine that if I was using this in real life with somebody, there might be a few awkward silences during our conversation. It's worth noting that this feature is technically still in beta, and it does require you to have an iPhone that supports Apple Intelligence. The feature won't work on the iPad or Mac either, and it's only available in a few languages currently. And it's also available on the AirPods Pro 2. so it's technically not unique to this device. Now, if I'm being frank, this probably isn't a feature I'd ever use myself in real life, mainly because I hate it when I'm talking to somebody and they've got their headphones in. Like, I just think that looks quite rude and a bit dystopian, almost like something out of a Black Mirror episode. So I'm probably not really the target consumer for this type of feature. Overall, however, the AirPods Pro 3 do represent a very nice evolution compared to the Pro 2s. Provided you're okay with the fit of these earbuds, I think these are a really great buy for $249, especially if you're coming from the first generation AirPods Pro or a non-Pro model. And of course, I'm expecting that with Black Friday and Christmas on the horizon, you'll be able to find plenty of discounts from wholesalers. Having said that, the second generation AirPods Pro are also still really good. So I think unless you're at the point where the battery has just given up, I wouldn't be in as much of a rush to upgrade. I think there eventually comes a point where the audio quality and noise cancellation are good enough for most people. Yes, the AirPods Pro 3 are better than the AirPods Pro 2 when it comes to sound quality. However, the AirPods Pro 2 were already very good. Prior to the AirPods Pro 3 existing, I never found myself complaining about the lack of sound quality on the AirPods Pro 2. So whether or not you want to upgrade is primarily going to boil down to whether or not you can justify spending $249 on a set of headphones in this economy. But yeah, hopefully you guys found this review useful. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe for the next one.